Hey, welcome back and thanks for joining me. This is an original story from Hidden Revenge Family, and it took a turn you truly didn't see coming. Let's get into it.
I didn't want to be there. The invitation wasn't really an invitation. It was a command wrapped in fake family pride. Darcy was opening the VIP wing of her veterans clinic, and apparently that meant I had to show up and support the family. Support in this case meant standing in a corner and not embarrassing anyone. I showed up in my Class A uniform anyway, pressed, clean, every ribbon in place, not to impress them, just because I don't know how to show up any other way. The place looked expensive. Polished marble floors, soft lighting, a string quartet playing something slow and forgettable, people in suits and dresses holding champagne like they actually knew what they were celebrating. I stayed near the wall, quiet, out of the way. That lasted about 30 seconds. Arthur walked over like he owned the building. Technically, he funded most of it, so I guess he thought that gave him the right to manage the guest list and the furniture, including me. He didn't even look at my face at first. His eyes went straight to the uniform, then back to my hands. "Good," he said, grabbing a tray of champagne from a passing server and pushing it into my hands. "You can at least be useful." I didn't move. He finally looked at me and that familiar smirk showed up. The one that always came right before he said something he thought was clever. "Help carry drinks," he added, lowering his voice, just enough to make it personal. "And don't make a scene. You're just a glorified medic, Vera. Don't forget that." Glorified medic. I've heard worse. Usually from people bleeding out on a table who didn't like being told to stay still. I didn't argue. There's no point arguing with someone who already decided who you are. So I took the tray, walked 2 steps, stopped. Not because of him, because something shifted in the room. It's hard to explain, but you feel it before you see it. A break in rhythm. The kind that doesn't belong in a place like this. Then I saw him, older man, late 60s maybe, standing near the corner, one hand pressed against his chest. His face went pale fast, not nervous pale, medical pale. He dropped his glass, it shattered against the marble. The music didn't stop right away. People just stared for a second like this was part of the event. Like maybe it was a performance. Then he collapsed, hard. His head missed the edge of a table by inches. His body hit the floor flat, no attempt to break the fall. Now the music stopped. Someone screamed. Darcy took one look and stepped back so fast she almost tripped over her own heels. "Oh my God," she said, covering her mouth. "There's blood, someone do something, get him out of here." Arthur didn't move toward the man. He looked around instead. "Security," he shouted. "Get this handled." Now handled, like the guy was a spill. I set the tray down, didn't drop it, just set it down and walked straight toward the man. By the time I reached him, he wasn't responsive. No pulse that I could feel right away. No steady breathing. I dropped to my knees on the marble, hands already in position. No hesitation. No panic. "Call 911, I said, not looking up. Now. Nobody moved. I didn't repeat myself. I started compressions. 1, 2, 3, 4. Straight down. Full recoil. Steady pace. 30 compressions. Tilt the head, clear the airway, 2 breaths, back to compressions, 1, 2, 3. The world around me got quiet, not because people stopped talking, but because none of it mattered. All that mattered was the rhythm. I've done this in worse places, in heat, in dust, under noise that actually meant something. This was just a clean floor and a crowd that didn't know what to do. Darcy's voice cut through the background. "Don't let him throw up on the carpet," she snapped at someone. "Move him, no, wait, just, oh my God." I ignored her. 30 compressions, 2 breaths, again. I felt it before I saw it. A slight resistance change, then a weak pulse. "Stay with me," I said under my breath, even though I didn't know if he could hear me. Another cycle. His chest moved on its own, shallow but there. "There it is," I said more to myself than anyone else. Sirens in the distance. Good. I kept going until the paramedics pushed through the crowd. They dropped beside me fast. Finally, professionals. "What do we have?" one of them asked. "Male, approximately late 60s, I said. Already shifting back to give them space, but staying close. Sudden collapse. No initial pulse. CPR initiated immediately. Regained weak pulse after 2 cycles. Breathing shallow but spontaneous. Possible cardiac event." They nodded, no questions about my authority. They heard the tone and moved with it. They got oxygen on him, hooked up monitors, started their protocol. I stood up slowly, my knees stiff from the marble. One of them glanced at me. "You medical?" Yeah. He gave a short nod. That was enough. They loaded the man onto the stretcher. As they lifted him, something rolled off the floor near where he had collapsed. A small bottle. I bent down and picked it up before it slid under a table. Heart medication, prescription label half worn. The cap was off, empty. I turned it just enough to see the logo. Clean, familiar, corporate, Darcy's company. I didn't react, not out loud, just held it for a second longer than necessary, then set it on the edge of a nearby table. The stretcher rolled past me. The paramedics moved fast, pushing through the crowd that suddenly remembered how to make space. Arthur stood there stunned like the script had changed, and nobody gave him the new lines. Darcy was still talking, but now it sounded different. Less control, more panic. I wiped my hands on a napkin someone had dropped on a tray nearby. No one asked me anything. No one thanked me. That was fine. I wasn't there for them. I looked back at the spot where the man had fallen, then at the bottle. She called me a glorified medic to make herself feel bigger. She had no idea that the same hands she just dismissed had spent years keeping men alive, in places where mistakes don't get second chances. And more importantly, she had no idea that I had just seen the crack that could bring her entire operation down. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been the most qualified person in the room and still been treated like you were only there to carry a tray? I left the clinic without saying goodbye. No scene, no confrontation, no speech about ethics or family or whatever word Darcy was pretending to understand that night. I got in my car, closed the door, and just sat there for a second. Not thinking, switching modes. There's a difference between being angry and being focused. One makes you loud, the other makes you dangerous. By the time I started the engine, I wasn't angry anymore. I was working. I drove straight back to base. No detours, no music. Just the sound of the road and a mental replay of that bottle in my hand. The label, the logo, the weight of it. Something was off, and I don't do probably. I do proof. My office was dark when I walked in. That's how I like it. Less distraction, more clarity. I dropped my keys on the desk, powered up my terminal, and logged into the secure system. Military credentials, multi-factor authentication. Clearance levels most people don't even know exist. The screen lit up, clean, quiet, waiting. I pulled up the drug database first, entered the lot number from memory. I don't write things down unless I have to. The system processed for a second. Then the file opened. Manufacturer, third-party supplier, distribution channel subcontracted through a private vendor, approved for use in veteran care facilities. That part didn't bother me. On paper, everything looked legal, so I went deeper. I flagged the supplier ID and cross-referenced it with procurement records. That's where the cracks started to show. The supplier existed, barely. Registered 6 months ago. Minimal operational history. No long-term federal contracts. No prior VA-level approvals. That alone should have slowed things down. It didn't. Because someone pushed it through, I pulled the batch composition report. Active ingredient levels popped up on the screen, then the variance column. I leaned back slightly. 40% deviation, I said out loud. That's not a rounding error. That's not a shipping issue. That's dilution, cheap filler, lower-grade compounds. The kind of shortcuts that don't show up until someone's heart decides it's had enough. I kept going, pulled adverse reaction reports tied to that lot. 2 flagged incidents in the past month, both labeled as complications due to pre-existing conditions. Convenient, no escalation, no recall, just paperwork bearing the problem. I opened the procurement authorization trail. That's where things get signed, approved, stamped, cleared for distribution. Every step leaves a mark. Every mark has a name. The first few signatures were exactly what you'd expect. Mid-level admins, compliance officers, people who follow checklists. Then I hit the final approval. I stopped moving. There it was, clear as day. Dr. Vera Hale, my name, my license, my authorization code, stamped and verified. For a second, I just stared at it, not shocked, not confused, just quiet, because now it made sense. The low-quality drugs, the fast-tracked approval, the lack of oversight. They didn't just cut corners. They built a system where if anything went wrong, it traced back to me. I pulled up the signature file, compared it to my actual digital signature. At a glance, it looked identical. Same structure, same flow, same authentication markers. Whoever did this didn't guess. They had access, or they got it from someone who did. I checked the login logs tied to the approval, timestamp, location, IP trace. Not from my terminal, not from any military network. It came from a private system routed through the clinic's administrative office, Darcy's territory. I leaned forward again, zooming in on the authorization chain. Arthur's name appeared 2 steps earlier. Financial override, budget justification. Of course. He funds it. She runs it. And I take the fall. Simple, efficient, dirty. I pulled the full batch distribution list. Dozens of shipments, all routed to veteran facilities under Darcy's management, all signed off under my name. I exhaled slowly. They're feeding garbage to soldiers, I said flat. Not a metaphor, not exaggeration, actual, measurable, documented garbage. And if one of those men died, if the one tonight didn't make it, the investigation would start with the signature. My signature. I opened a new window and accessed federal compliance protocols. Medical fraud involving veteran care doesn't stay local. It escalates fast. Add in falsified military credentials. That crosses into federal territory. Add in misuse of an active duty officer's authorization. Now we're not talking about lawsuits. We're talking about criminal charges. Serious ones. I leaned back again, letting it settle. Not emotionally, strategically. Darcy didn't panic tonight because she thought she was safe. Arthur didn't step in because he thought this was manageable. They both believed the same thing, that I was still the quiet one in the corner, the one who takes the tray and keeps her head down. They forgot something. In my line of work, identity isn't just a name. It's clearance, authority, command. You don't get to borrow it, you don't get to fake it, and you definitely don't get to use it to cover up negligence that can kill people. I copied every file, every log, every report, stored them in an encrypted folder, then backed it up to a secure military server. Chain of custody matters, so does timing. I didn't report it. Not yet. You don't fire the first shot when the target is still walking into position. I closed the files and shut down the system. The room went dark again, quiet, controlled. I picked up my keys, paused for a second, then set them back down. There was one more thing I needed to confirm. I reopened the terminal, pulled up the authentication protocol tied to my signature. There it was. A secondary override code, one that only exists if someone tries to replicate a military authorization outside approved channels. It had been triggered and logged, hidden deep enough that no civilian system would flag it. But it was there, proof that the system itself knew something was wrong. I allowed myself a small nod. Good, I said, because that meant I wasn't just holding evidence. I was holding a weapon. I finally stood up, grabbed my jacket, and headed for the door. No rush, no noise, just a plan forming step by step. They thought stealing my signature was a safe move. They thought using the name of the daughter they ignored would keep them protected. What they forgot, in the military, stealing the identity of a commanding officer isn't fraud. It's treason. I walked into Darcy's office without knocking. She liked control. Knocking gave her time to prepare. I wasn't interested in that. Arthur was already there, standing near the window, like he was inspecting the parking lot for threats that didn't exist. Arms crossed, jaw tight, the usual performance. Darcy sat behind her desk, perfectly composed, hair in place, makeup flawless, like last night never happened. Like a man hadn't collapsed 10 feet away from her designer shoes. She smiled when she saw me. Too quick, too polished. Vera, she said, sweet enough to rot teeth. Good you're here. I didn't sit, didn't ask permission, just stood across from the desk and waited. Arthur glanced at me, irritation flashing for a second. Sit down, he said. I didn't. That was my answer. Darcy didn't push it. She reached for a folder on her desk and slid it toward me. Paper, not digital. Interesting. We just need to clean up a few administrative details from yesterday, she said. Standard procedure. Standard. That word gets used a lot when something isn't. I opened the folder. 2 documents. An NDA, tight language, broad coverage, enough legal padding to bury a small country, and a compliance confirmation form, medical protocol acknowledgement, supplier validation, final authorization, my name already printed at the bottom. Convenient. I flipped through the pages once, slow enough to look like I was reading, fast enough to show I wasn't impressed. Darcy leaned back in her chair watching me. Just sign it, Vera, she said. It's routine. We're aligning internal processes with federal guidelines. That sentence didn't mean anything. Arthur stepped in like he always does when he thinks pressure will help. Do something useful for the family for once, he said. This isn't complicated. I looked up at him. Nothing you do is ever simple, I said. He didn't like that. Good. Darcy raised a hand slightly like she was calming a situation she created. Look, she said softer now. I know you don't feel included. But this is an opportunity. We're expanding. There's money involved. There it was, not concern, not responsibility, money. She tapped the document with one manicured finger. Sign this and I'll make sure you get a commission, she added. Enough to replace that car you're driving. It's honestly a little embarrassing. I almost smiled, not because it was funny, because it was predictable. You're offering me a payout, I said, to sign off on something I didn't authorize. Darcy didn't blink. I'm offering you a chance to be part of something successful, she corrected. Arthur snorted. Don't overthink it. Sign the paper. I looked back down at the document. The language was tight, but the intention was obvious. If I signed this, I wasn't just acknowledging the process. I was owning it. Every shipment, every batch, every outcome, including whatever happened next time someone's heart gave out on her floor. They weren't just covering themselves. They were building a case. And I was supposed to hand them the final piece. I reached for the pen. Arthur relaxed slightly. I saw it in his shoulders. Darcy's smile sharpened just a little. They thought they had me. I let my posture shift. Just enough. A small exhale, a slight drop in my shoulders. People see what they expect to see. They expected hesitation. They got compliance. I placed the pen on the paper, positioned it over my name, paused. Not for drama, for precision. Then I signed. But not the way they thought. I left out one stroke, a small hook at the end of my last name, subtle, easy to miss if you don't know what you're looking for, and I pressed the pen down harder than necessary. Enough to tear the surface of the paper just slightly. Not visible from a distance, but it was there, deliberate, controlled. Arthur didn't notice. Darcy didn't notice. They weren't trained to. I finished the signature and slid the paper back across the desk. There, I said. Darcy grabbed it immediately. Didn't even try to hide it. She scanned the page quickly, eyes locking onto my name. Her smile came back bigger this time, satisfied. You see, she said, glancing at Arthur. That wasn't so hard. Arthur nodded once like this confirmed everything he believed about me. That's better, he said. Maybe you're finally learning. I didn't respond. Darcy stacked the papers, neatly tapping them against the desk, like they were already filed and finished. Now we can move forward without any misunderstandings, she added. No misunderstandings. That's one way to describe fraud. I turned to leave. Arthur's voice stopped me. Vera. I paused but didn't turn around. You did the right thing, he said. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I nodded once and walked out. The hallway outside felt quieter than it should have. Same building, same people, different air. I kept walking, didn't look back, didn't check my phone, didn't rush, because the moment that mattered had already happened. Not when I signed. When I chose how to sign. By the time I reached the exit, the system was already moving. Not their system. Mine. That missing stroke. It wasn't a mistake. It was a marker. A duress signature, recognized in certain federal and military-linked financial systems as an indicator of coercion. It doesn't stop the document from existing. It makes it dangerous. Because once it's processed, it doesn't just validate the agreement. It flags it, quietly, deep in the system where routine audits turn into investigations. And that pressure mark, that slight tear in the paper, that's physical confirmation. Proof that the signature wasn't given freely. Digital and physical alignment. Hard to argue against. Especially when the rest of the data starts lining up. I stepped outside into the morning air. Cool, clean. A sharp contrast to the office I just left. Somewhere behind me, Darcy was probably filing that document. Logging it. Attaching it to her process chain. Thinking she just secured everything. Thinking she just locked me into her mess. She walked out of that room with what she believed was control. A piece of paper with my name on it. Authority, protection, leverage. What she actually walked out with was a trigger. She thought she just tied me to the fall. She had no idea that the stroke of that pen had just activated something aimed straight at her accounts. And this time, I didn't need to raise my voice. The system was going to do that for me. I didn't check the system for 48 hours. Not because I forgot. Because timing matters. You don't stare at a trap after you set it. You let it close. So I went back to work. Real work. Morning briefings, Case reviews, surgical prep. The kind of routine that keeps people alive without needing a spotlight. By the second day, everything felt normal again. On the surface. Underneath, I knew exactly what was about to happen. I was in my office on base when it started. Nothing dramatic at first. No alarms on my end. Just a quiet notification sliding into a secured inbox. Flag triggered. Financial irregularity. Federal audit initiated. I didn't open it right away. I took a sip of my coffee first. Black, no sugar, no distraction. Then I clicked. The report was clean, efficient, no wasted words. The document I signed had been processed. The duress marker had been recognized. And the system did exactly what it was designed to do. It escalated. Not to a supervisor, not to a compliance officer, straight to a federal review channel tied to veteran medical funding. That's where things stop being administrative and start becoming criminal. I scrolled once. There it was, a pending transfer from the Department of Veterans Affairs, $5 million. Scheduled to hit Darcy's clinic account that morning. Didn't happen. Instead, the funds were rerouted, held, locked, redirected to the U.S. Treasury under a flagged investigation. Reason medical fraud review, active. I leaned back in my chair. No reaction, just confirmation. The system had done its job. I checked the secondary notes. All associated accounts under temporary restriction. Credit activity flagged. Transaction monitoring elevated. Which meant one thing. Darcy wasn't just losing incoming money. She was about to lose access to everything else. I closed the file. Right on time. I didn't need to see the rest. I already knew what it looked like on the other end, because I've seen that moment before. Not in a clinic. In operations. The second someone realizes the ground just disappeared under their feet. It doesn't start with panic. It starts with confusion, then denial, then noise. My phone rang. I didn't even look at the screen before answering. Yeah. There was no greeting on the other end, just breathing, fast, sharp. Then what the hell did you do, Darcy? No polish, no control, just raw panic. I didn't answer right away. Let her sit in it for a second. What are you talking about? I said finally. My accounts, she snapped. The transfer didn't go through. Everything is frozen. My cards are getting declined. Do you have any idea what this looks like in front of investors? I pictured it. The lobby, the polished floors, her standing there in heels trying to smile while a machine tells her no, again and again. I don't manage your accounts, I said. Don't play stupid with me, she yelled. You signed the documents, and now suddenly everything is flagged. That's not a coincidence. I took another sip of coffee. You're the one running a multi-million-dollar operation, I said. I'm just a glorified medic, remember? Silence. Not calm silence. The kind that builds pressure. Then, you did something, she said, lower now, but more dangerous. I don't know how, but you did something. Fix it. I almost admired that. She skipped denial and went straight to blame. Efficient. I don't have access to federal banking systems, I said. You might want to talk to your finance team. They're useless, she snapped. No one can tell me anything. All I'm getting is under review and pending investigation. Do you know what that means? Yes, I said. She paused. That caught her off guard. It means someone flagged your operation at a level you can't override, I continued. And now every dollar connected to it is being watched. You're going to fix this, she said, like she could still give orders. I didn't respond. She pushed harder. Do you understand what happens if this goes public, she said. Investors pull out, contracts disappear, everything collapses. That includes you, Vera. Your name is on those files too. There it was, the threat, wrapped in shared consequences. You should call your lawyers, I said. Oh, I will, she shot back. And when they're done, you'll be begging me to settle this quietly. I let out a short breath, not a laugh, just enough to show I wasn't impressed. Make sure they're good, I said. You're going to need them. You think this is funny, she snapped. No, I said. I think it's predictable. Another pause, longer this time. I could hear movement on her end. Voices, probably staff trying to fix something they didn't understand. You don't get it, she said, quieter now. I can bury this. I've handled worse. No, I said. You've handled things you could control. This is the same. It's not, she exhaled sharply. You're going to regret this, she said. I didn't do anything. I replied. That was technically true. I didn't freeze her accounts. I didn't reroute the money. I didn't flag the system. I just signed a piece of paper. The right way. Fix it, she said again. Then the line went dead. I set my phone down on the desk. The room was quiet again, same as before, but now the pieces were moving, not fast, not loud, just steady. That's how real pressure works. It doesn't explode, it tightens. I pulled the notification back up on my screen. Read the headline one more time. Medical fraud review, active. That word matters. Active means ongoing. Ongoing means expanding, which means this wasn't going to stop at one transfer or one account. It was going to keep digging. Every transaction, every approval, every signature, including mine. That's the part Darcy didn't understand. She thought this was a problem she could throw money at or intimidate into silence. She thought lawyers in expensive suits could make it disappear. She was wrong, because the system she triggered doesn't negotiate. It builds cases, and it does it slowly, carefully. By the time it speaks out loud, it's already finished. I leaned back again, staring at nothing in particular, not thinking about Darcy, not thinking about Arthur, just the process, the sequence, the outcome. She could scream, she could threaten, she could call every attorney she knew. It wouldn't change what was already in motion. She was fighting something she couldn't see, and that's always the worst kind of fight. She thought her biggest problem was me. A medic she never took seriously. She had no idea. The real enemy she just woke up doesn't wear a suit. It wears a uniform. I stepped into the storage room and let the door close behind me. No windows, no cameras, no audience. Just metal shelves, stacked files, and the kind of stale air that doesn't move unless someone forces it to. Darcy was already there. So was Arthur. Of course they picked this room. People like control. And when they're losing it in public, they go looking for private spaces where they think they can get it back. Darcy stood near the far wall, arms tight against her sides like she was holding herself together. Arthur didn't bother pretending. He was pacing, slow, heavy steps, the kind meant to make noise. The moment he saw me, he stopped, turned, walked straight over, no greeting, no setup. His hand slammed down on the metal table between us. The sound echoed off the walls. "You think this is funny?" he snapped. I didn't answer, didn't move, didn't give him anything to work with. "That money is frozen," he continued, voice rising. $5 million, investors are calling, contracts are stalling. And somehow, this all starts right after you decide to play games with paperwork. Sounds like a compliance issue, I said. Wrong answer, his jaw tightened. You don't get to be smart right now, he said, stepping closer. You fix it. I didn't break it. His hand came up fast, not to hit, to grab. He caught my shoulder and shoved me back half a step, forcing me closer to the wall. That's where you're wrong, he said low now. You think you're protected because you wear that uniform. I've spent my entire life building connections. Judges, regulators, people who decide what happens to problems like this. I looked down at his hand on my shoulder, then back up at him. You're still touching me, I said. That wasn't what he expected. It threw him off just enough. You're going to call whoever you need to call, he went on, ignoring it. You're going to get those accounts unfrozen, and you're going to clean up whatever mess you started, or what I asked. Darcy stepped in before he could answer. Or we let this go the other way, she said, voice tight but controlled. Your name is on those approvals, Vera. If this investigation digs in, it doesn't just hit us. It hits you. I'm aware. She took a step closer. Then act like it, she said. Call your contacts. Fix the flag. Make it disappear. Arthur squeezed my shoulder once harder this time. And if you don't, he added, I will personally make sure your medical license disappears before this even reaches a courtroom. You won't work in this country again. You understand me, I did. Every word, every threat, every assumption behind it. I reached up and took his wrist, not aggressive, just firm. Then I pushed his hand off my shoulder, slow, controlled. I didn't step back, didn't create distance, just removed the contact. That was enough. He noticed. So did Darcy. I don't think you understand what's happening, I said. Arthur let out a short, sharp laugh. Oh, I understand perfectly, he said. You got in over your head and now you're trying to act like you're in control. No, I said. You don't understand the scope. Darcy's eyes narrowed. What is that supposed to mean? I reached into my jacket, pulled out a folded sheet of paper, set it on the table between us. Didn't rush, didn't explain, just slid it forward. Darcy grabbed it first. Her eyes scanned the page, then slowed. Arthur leaned in, reading over her shoulder. The room got quieter, Not physically, mentally, because now they were processing. Black and white print, chemical analysis, compound breakdown, variance percentages, official header, pentagon. Darcy's hand tightened slightly on the paper. "What is this?" she asked, but she already knew. "The batch you approved," I said. Arthur straightened. "That doesn't prove anything," he said quickly. "It proves enough." Darcy looked up at me. "You're exaggerating," she said. "Every supplier has variance." "Not 40%, I replied. That landed. You could see it. Not in her words. In the pause. Arthur shook his head. "This is nothing," he said. "Technical noise. We can handle this." "No," I said. "You can't." He turned on me. "You don't get to tell me what I can and can't handle." "You're right," I said. "The system will do that for you." Darcy stepped back slightly, bumping into one of the metal shelves behind her. Files shifted. A soft rattle filled the room. "Stop talking in circles," she snapped. "Say what you're actually saying." So I did. "The medication you pushed through your clinic is contaminated," I said. "It's below federal standard. It's already linked to adverse events." Arthur opened his mouth to interrupt. I didn't let him. "And you approved it using my credentials," I continued. "Which means this isn't just a regulatory issue." I let that sit for a second, then finished it. "It's a military one." Silence, not confusion, recognition. Arthur's expression changed first, anger to calculation, then something else, something colder. "What are you implying?" he asked. "I'm not implying anything," I said. "I'm stating it clearly." I tapped the paper once. "This doesn't go to civil court," I said. "You don't get to negotiate it down or bury it under settlements." Darcy's voice dropped. "Then where does it go?" I looked at her. "Court-martial jurisdiction." Arthur's face lost color. "Not all at once, but enough." "You're bluffing," he said. But it didn't sound like he believed it. "I don't bluff," I said. Darcy's grip on the paper loosened. It slipped slightly in her hand. "That's not possible," she said. "We're civilians." "You used a military license," I said. "You forged a military authorization. That changes the rules." Arthur stepped back. Just one step. But it was the first time he created distance instead of closing it. "That's not how this works," he said, quieter now. "It is now." Darcy shook her head. "No," she said. "No, we can fix this. There has to be a way to fix this." "There was," I said. I didn't need to explain when. They knew, before the shortcuts, before the signatures, before the man hit the floor in their lobby. Arthur ran a hand over his face. Not dramatic, just tired, or maybe realizing something he didn't want to admit. "You're going to help us," he said finally. Not a command this time, a statement. I held his gaze. "No," I said. Darcy looked at me like she didn't recognize who was standing in front of her. "Vera," I cut her off. "You made your decisions," I said. "Now you deal with them." The room felt smaller, not because it changed, because they did. All that pressure they thought they could use, it was gone. Replaced by something else, uncertainty. I picked up the paper, folded it once, and put it back in my jacket. No reason to leave it behind. They had already seen enough. I turned toward the door. Arthur didn't stop me. Darcy didn't speak. I reached for the handle, paused for half a second. Not for them, for myself. Then I opened the door and stepped out. The hallway felt wide, open, like breathing again. Behind me, that room stayed exactly what it was. Closed, tight, full of people who just realized they weren't in control anymore. They thought a closed room could break me. They forgot something. I've operated under mortar fire with less space and more pressure. And in my world, silence is always more dangerous than shouting. I pressed the crease on my sleeve one last time and checked the ribbons. Everything aligned. No shortcuts. No missing pieces. No borrowed identity. Exactly how it should be. The car ride to the gala was quiet. Not tense, just quiet. The kind of silence that comes when the outcome is already in motion. The venue was exactly what you'd expect. High ceilings, crystal lights, polished floors. The kind of place where people talk about integrity while checking who's watching. A banner near the entrance read Medical Honors Gala, big words, clean font. No mention of what actually happens behind the paperwork. I stepped inside. No tray this time. No corner, no pretending. Heads turned. Not all at once, but enough. Uniforms do that, especially when they're worn correctly. Class A, full ribbons. Rank visible, captain. I didn't announce it. I didn't need to. I moved through the room without stopping. People looked. Some recognized what they were seeing. Others just saw something that didn't fit their expectation of me. Good. That meant they were paying attention. Darcy saw me before I reached the center of the room. Of course she did. She always scans for problems. And right now I was one. She moved fast, too fast for someone trying to look composed. "What are you doing?" she hissed the second she got close enough. No greeting, no smile, just damage control. I didn't answer. She looked me up and down, eyes locking onto the uniform. "That is not appropriate," she said, her voice tight. "You look ridiculous." I adjusted my cuff slightly, not because it needed it, because it annoyed her. "Go change," she snapped. "Or better yet, leave." "You're not part of this." "I'm exactly where I need to be," I said. Her jaw tightened. "You're going to embarrass us," she said. I looked at her. "You're doing that just fine on your own." That landed. She stepped closer, lowering her voice even more. "Listen to me," she said. "We have investors here, real ones, people who don't need this." She gestured at me like I was a problem she couldn't categorize. "You don't get to show up like this and make it about you." I held her gaze. "I'm not making it about me," I said. "You already did that." Arthur's voice cut in from behind her. "What's going on?" He walked over, already irritated. Then he saw me. Really saw me. The uniform, the rank, the ribbons. For a split second, something shifted in his expression. Then he forced it back down. "This isn't necessary," he said. "It's accurate," I replied. He didn't like that. "Go home," he said. "We'll deal with this later." "No," I said. That was it. No explanation, no negotiation. Just no. Darcy stepped in again, sharper now. "You're not ruining this night," she said. "Do you understand me?" I didn't respond, didn't argue, didn't raise my voice. I just stood there, and that was enough to make her lose control. "Get out," she snapped. "Now." I adjusted my sleeve again. Calm, precise. "I'm staying." Arthur exhaled through his nose like he was done wasting time. "Fine," he said. "Stand there. Just don't speak." I didn't plan to. Not yet. He turned and walked back toward the stage. Darcy lingered for a second, glaring at me like she could force me to disappear. Then she followed him. The room shifted back into its rhythm. Conversations resumed. Glasses clinked. People laughed at things that weren't funny. I stayed where I was, watching, listening, waiting. Arthur stepped up to the podium a few minutes later, confident again. Or pretending to be. "Good evening," he began. Voice smooth, practiced. "Tonight we celebrate dedication, service, our unwavering commitment to those who have sacrificed for this country." I almost checked to see if anyone believed him. Some did. That's the part that always surprises people. How easy it is to sell the right words. He continued, talking about the clinic, the expansion, the impact, how they were improving lives, how they were setting a new standard. Darcy stood nearby, smiling at the right moments, nodding at the right lines. Perfect timing, perfect image. A room full of people applauding something they didn't understand. Then the doors opened. Not gently, not quietly. The double oak doors at the far end of the hall pushed open with enough force to break the rhythm instantly. Every head turned. Not because of the sound, because of what walked in. Tall, straight posture, uniform, 4 stars on his shoulders. No hesitation in his step. He didn't scan the room, didn't pause, didn't wait to be announced. He just walked in like the space already belonged to him, because in a way it did. The air changed. You could feel it. Conversation stopped. Laughter died mid-sentence. People moved without being told to, creating space. Arthur saw him. And everything about him shifted. Smile wider, posture straighter, voice ready, opportunity. Darcy reacted the same way. Immediate recovery mode, high-value target. They both moved at the same time, stepping off the stage, heading toward the entrance, ready to greet him, ready to sell, ready to fix everything with one handshake. I didn't move. I didn't need to, because I already knew something they didn't. Arthur reached him first. General, he started, hand already extending. Darcy was half a step behind, smile locked in place. But the man didn't stop. Didn't slow down, didn't even glance at them. Not once. He walked straight past, like they weren't there, like they didn't matter. Arthur's hand stayed in the air for half a second too long. Darcy's smile froze, then cracked. Because the man with 4 stars wasn't here for them, and they were about to find out why. I watched him walk past them without slowing down. Arthur's hand was still hanging in the air when the general moved right by him. Darcy's smile didn't just fade, it collapsed. And the room noticed. You don't ignore people like Arthur and Darcy in a room like that. Not unless you have a reason. He had one. General Harris didn't look left or right. He didn't scan faces. He didn't acknowledge anyone trying to get his attention. He walked straight across the room, toward me. The crowd adjusted without being told. Conversations stopped. People stepped aside. Not out of politeness, out of instinct. Authority does that. Arthur recovered fast enough to follow him. "General, sir," he said, forcing his voice back into something presentable. "Welcome. It's an honor to have you here tonight." No response. Not even a glance. Arthur kept walking beside him anyway, trying to insert himself back into the moment. "You must be looking for the stage," he continued. "We were just about to—" He stopped mid-sentence because Harris stopped. Right in front of me, close enough that I could see the details most people miss. The way he holds his shoulders, the way his eyes move without turning his head. He knew exactly where he was, and exactly who he was looking at. Arthur stepped in, still trying to salvage something. "Sir, this is just—" He started gesturing vaguely in my direction. "She's just a support staff, helps around the clinic. Nothing official." I didn't react. I didn't need to. Because Harris didn't acknowledge him. Not a word, not a look, nothing. Instead, he did something that cut through the entire room in a single second. He brought his heels together, sharp, precise, back straight. Then he raised his hand and saluted, clean, exact, no hesitation, directed at me. The room went silent. Not quiet, silent. The kind of silence that doesn't belong in a place like that. I returned the salute, just as clean, just as precise. No rush, no hesitation. That's when it hit them. Not all at once, but fast enough. Darcy's glass slipped out of her hand. It hit the floor and shattered the sound sharp against the silence. No one reacted to it. No one cared. Because now every eye in that room was locked on one thing, us. Harris lowered his hand. His voice came next. Loud enough to carry, controlled enough to land every word exactly where it needed to. "Captain," he said. No explanation, no introduction, just the rank. Then he continued. "Half of my special operations team in Syria is still alive because of you. That did it. You could feel the shift. People weren't just watching anymore. They were recalculating." Arthur didn't move, didn't speak, didn't breathe from the look of it. Darcy looked like she was trying to process two completely different realities at the same time, and failing at both. Harris turned his head slightly, not toward the crowd, toward Arthur. And this time he looked at him, directly. The temperature in the room dropped. "You called her support staff?" Harris asked. Arthur opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Harris didn't wait. "She is the chief trauma surgeon attached to Special Operations Command," he said. "And she just saved one of my men on your clinic floor 2 days ago." No raised voice, no anger, just facts, delivered clean. Arthur's face lost whatever color it had left. His mouth opened again, but it didn't matter anymore. Nothing he said would fix this. Darcy took a step back, then another, like distance might help her understand what was happening. It didn't. Her composure was gone, not cracked. Gone. The room reacted in layers. First silence, then whispers, then movement. People stepping back from Arthur and Darcy like whatever they were involved in might be contagious. Investors, doctors, partners, all doing the same calculation. Who they were standing next to, and who they weren't. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Everything that mattered had already been said. Harris turned back to me, a slight nod, professional, acknowledging. Nothing more. That's how it works. No theatrics, no exaggeration, just recognition. Arthur finally found his voice. There must be some misunderstanding," he said, but even he sounded like he didn't believe it. "There isn't," Harris replied. "Simple, final." Darcy shook her head almost to herself. No, this doesn't," she started, but the sentence never finished, because there was nothing left to build it on. Their version of me was gone, replaced by something they couldn't control, something they couldn't dismiss, something they couldn't rewrite. And the room saw it. Every person there, every single one. I looked around once, not slowly, not dramatically, just enough to see it, the shift, the distance, the judgment, not directed at me, at them. Arthur lowered his head slightly, not in respect, in realization. Darcy didn't move anymore. She just stood there, frozen in a version of the night that no longer existed. The silence stayed, heavy, thick, uncomfortable, more than any argument, more than any accusation, because silence like that doesn't leave room for denial, only consequences. And they were just starting to arrive. The room felt tighter than any space I'd been in before, not physically, mentally, because now everyone knew, and no one was going to pretend otherwise. That silence pressed in from every direction, heavier than any cell, more suffocating than any closed room. Every eye in that place was on my family. Not with respect, not with admiration, with something else. And the truth was, this wasn't the end. This was just the moment the sentence walked in. The silence didn't break. It got interrupted. The doors opened again. This time, no hesitation, no ceremony. Black jackets, federal markings, controlled movement. DCIS, FBI. They didn't announce themselves. They didn't need to. The room shifted instantly, not confusion, recognition. Two agents moved straight toward the stage. No wasted motion, no eye contact with anyone else. Arthur saw them coming, and for the first time that night, he didn't try to speak, didn't try to fix it, didn't try to perform. He just stood there, waiting. They reached him in seconds. Arthur Hale, one of them, said, voice flat, "You need to come with us. No build-up, no explanation, just procedure." Arthur straightened slightly like instinct kicked in. "There's been a misunderstanding," he said. "I can have my legal team." "Hands on the table," the agent said. Arthur didn't move, not right away. Then the second agent stepped closer, not aggressive, just enough. Arthur placed his hands on the table, slow, measured, like he still thought he could control how this looked. The cuffs came out, clean metal, no hesitation. They locked around his wrists with a sharp final sound. That was it. That was the moment. No speech could come back from that. Darcy made a sound behind me, not a word, not even a full cry, just something breaking. I turned. She was on her knees. Not gracefully, not intentionally, just collapsed. Her hands were shaking, makeup starting to run, breathing uneven. The room was still watching, every single person. No one stepped in, no one offered help. Because now it was clear what this was and no one wanted to be part of it. She looked up at me, not angry, not defensive, terrified. "Vera," she said, her voice cracking. "Vera, please." She pushed herself forward, hands on the floor, then she grabbed the edge of my uniform. Tight, desperate. "You have to stop this," she said. You can tell them this is a mistake. You're a captain, they'll listen to you." I looked down at her, really looked. Not at the image she built, not at the version she showed the world, at what was left. Fear, panic, no control. "I'm your sister," she said. "We're family, you can't let them do this to me." The words hung there, heavy, wrong. I didn't feel anything. No anger, no satisfaction, just clarity. I reached down, took her hands, not rough, not gentle, just steady, and I removed them from my uniform. One finger at a time. She didn't resist. She just stared up at me like I was the last thing holding her in place. "You said I was the embarrassment of this family," I said. My voice didn't rise, didn't shake. It carried anyway, because the room was still silent. Every word landed. "You said I wasn't useful," I continued. "That I was just patching people up." Her face crumpled. "I didn't mean I didn't stop. The uniform doesn't protect people who profit off soldiers," I said. "It doesn't shield fraud. It doesn't erase what you did." She shook her head. Crying now, open, uncontrolled. "Please," I finished it. "You're not family," I said. "You're a case file waiting to be processed." That was it. No extra words, no emphasis, just the truth. The agent stepped in behind her. One of them crouched slightly. "Ma'am, you need to stand up." She didn't, so they helped her. Not gently, not harshly, just efficiently. Her hands were pulled back. Cuffs clicked into place. Another sharp sound in a room that didn't need any more. Arthur was already being moved. Darcy followed, both of them walking past the same people who were applauding them less than 10 minutes ago. Now those same people stepped aside. Not out of respect, out of distance, eyes everywhere. Whispers starting again. Not quiet enough to hide, not loud enough to confront. Exactly the kind of attention they used to control, now turned on them. Arthur kept his head forward. Darcy didn't. She looked back once, at me, like she was trying to understand how it got here. I didn't give her anything, no expression, no reaction, just distance. They were escorted out through the same doors everyone had admired earlier. The same doors that had opened for opportunity, now closing on consequences. The room didn't recover. It couldn't. There's no version of that night where people go back to small talk after that. Harris stepped closer. Not formal this time, just enough to be heard. You handled it clean, he said. I nodded once. That's the job. He studied me for a second, then gave a small nod in return. Respect, not praise, not approval, just acknowledgement. That's all I needed. I adjusted my sleeve again, out of habit. Then I turned. No announcement, no goodbye. Just walked, through the same room, past the same people. None of them stopped me. None of them spoke. Because whatever they thought they knew earlier didn't apply anymore. I pushed through the doors and stepped outside. The night air hit different, colder, cleaner, quiet. No music, no voices, no performance, just space. I stood there for a second, not thinking about them, not replaying anything, just breathing. For the first time in a while, there was nothing left to manage, nothing left to hold back, no role to play, no version of myself to shrink down for someone else, just truth, simple, clear, uncomfortable for some people, necessary for others. I walked toward my car, no rush, no wait. Behind me, the building still glowed, still full of people trying to process what they just saw. But that wasn't my concern anymore. I got in, closed the door, and drove. No destination in mind, just forward. Because for the first time, there was nothing left behind worth going back to. I didn't go home right away. I drove for a while, then pulled over at a quiet spot and just sat there. No phone, no music, no voices telling me who I was supposed to be. Just silence. And for the first time in a long time, that silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was clear. That's when it hit me, not what happened, not what they did, what I allowed. Because if I'm being honest, none of this started at that gala. It started years ago. Every time I stayed quiet when I should have spoken. Every time I let a comment slide because it wasn't worth it. Every time I accepted being reduced to something smaller just to keep things smooth. I told myself I was being patient. I told myself I was choosing peace. I wasn't. I was being convenient. Convenient for them. Easy to manage. Easy to dismiss. Easy to define. That's the part no one talks about. People will treat you the way you allow them to define you. And if you don't correct it early, they don't just keep doing it. They build their entire view of you around it. In my family, I wasn't the surgeon. I wasn't the officer. I wasn't the one making life and death decisions every week. I was the quiet one, the one who just patches people up. And I let that version exist, not because it was true, because it was easier than fighting it. But here's what I learned the hard way. If you don't define your value, someone else will. And they won't do it fairly. They'll do it in a way that benefits them. Arthur needed me to be small so he could feel in control. Darcy needed me to be insignificant so her version of success looked bigger. And I played along. Not actively, but passively. And passive doesn't mean harmless. It means you're giving someone else permission to write your role. There's a difference between being patient and being passive. I used to think they were the same. They're not. Patience is controlled. Passive is surrendered. One is a choice. The other is avoidance. And avoidance always costs you more later. I paid that cost, not in one big moment, in years of small ones. Every ignored comment, every forced smile, every time I let something slide because it's not worth the fight. It adds up. Until one day you're standing in a room where no one sees you correctly and they think they're right. That's the dangerous part. Not that they're wrong, that they're confident about it. That's when it stops being disrespect and starts becoming structure. A system built around a version of you that doesn't exist. And breaking that system, that's not emotional, that's strategic. Because here's the truth. You can't argue your way out of a role people are comfortable with. You can't explain your value to people who benefit from ignoring it. And you definitely can't expect respect from people who rely on you staying small. So what do? You stop asking. That's it. You stop asking to be seen correctly. You stop asking to be treated fairly. You stop asking for approval from people who already decided not to give it. And you start acting in a way that doesn't require their permission. That's what changed for me. Not the gala, not the arrest, that moment in the car. When I realized I didn't need them to understand anything. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need closure. I needed clarity. And clarity is simple. You either respect what I bring to the table or you don't get a seat at it. That applies everywhere: family, work, relationships. Anywhere people try to reduce you to something that's easier for them to handle. There's always going to be someone who talks over you, downplays what you do, acts like your role doesn't matter. That doesn't make them powerful. It just means they're used to being unchallenged. And the moment you stop fitting into that version they created, they don't get confused, they get uncomfortable. That's a good sign. It means something is changing. For me, that change wasn't loud. It didn't start with confrontation. It started with a decision. I'm done being easy to underestimate. I'm done correcting people politely while they keep doing the same thing. I'm done shrinking so other people can feel bigger. And once that decision is made, everything else becomes simpler, not easier, simpler. You stop reacting to every comment. You stop explaining yourself to the wrong people. You stop wasting energy on conversations that don't move anything forward. And you start focusing on what actually matters: your work, your standards, your boundaries. Because at the end of the day, respect isn't something you negotiate. It's something people adjust to when they realize you're not going to lower your value anymore. That's what that night gave me. Not revenge, not satisfaction, clarity. And once you have that, you don't go back. You don't go back to being quiet just to keep the peace. You don't go back to letting people define you because it's easier. You don't go back to roles that were never yours to begin with. Because now you know something most people learn too late. The moment you stop needing their approval is the moment they lose control over you. I didn't win because I was louder. I won because I was quieter longer. That's the part most people miss when they look at what happened. They see the moment everything collapsed. They don't see the hours before it. The decisions that didn't look impressive. The choices that felt slow. The discipline to not react when reacting would have been easier. Because the truth is, I had plenty of chances to explode. At the clinic, in that office, in that storage room. Every time someone talked down to me, I could have pushed back, raised my voice, forced the situation, but that wouldn't have solved anything. It would have made me easier to dismiss. Emotional, unstable, exactly the version they were already comfortable with. So I didn't play that game. I played a different one. One where timing matters more than volume. One where proof matters more than opinion. One where you don't move until the outcome is already in your favor. That's not about being cold. It's about being effective. Most people think strength is immediate. It's not. Immediate reactions feel strong, but they rarely change anything. They just release pressure. And once that pressure is gone, you're left with the same problem, just louder. What actually changes outcomes is control. Control of information, control of timing, control of yourself. That's what I focused on. I didn't argue at the clinic because I didn't need to. I didn't confront Darcy the moment I found the evidence because I wasn't ready to use it yet. I didn't refuse to sign that document because signing it correctly gave me leverage. That's the difference. Most people try to avoid bad situations. I used them, not recklessly, not emotionally, strategically. And that's something you can apply anywhere. Work, family, any situation where someone is trying to corner you. The instinct is always the same. Fight back immediately. Prove them wrong on the spot. Clear your name right away. I get it. That instinct is real, but it's not always useful. Because when you react too early, you're reacting on their terms, in their timing, inside their setup. And that's exactly where they want you. What you need to do instead is pause. Not forever, just long enough to understand what's actually happening. Ask yourself, what do they think they have on me? What are they trying to get me to do? And what happens if I don't respond the way they expect? That last question matters because most manipulative systems rely on predictable reactions. They expect you to defend yourself. They expect you to argue. They expect you to try to fix things quickly. And when you don't, they lose rhythm. That's when you gain control. For me, control looked simple on the outside. I stayed quiet. I listened. I watched. But underneath that, I was building something. Evidence, structure, options. By the time I moved, it wasn't a reaction. It was a decision. That's the difference between playing defense and playing strategy. Defense keeps you in the game, strategy ends it. Another thing people get wrong, they think you need power to do this. You don't. You need clarity, because power without clarity is just noise. And clarity tells you exactly where to apply pressure. In my case, it wasn't about exposing them publicly right away. It was about triggering a system they couldn't control. Because systems don't care about your tone. They don't care about your explanation. They care about data. And once the data is in place, everything else follows. That's why I didn't need to argue with Darcy on the phone. I didn't need to explain anything in that storage room. I didn't need to convince anyone at the gala. The system did the work. All I had to do was set it in motion. That's a lesson most people learn too late. You don't always have to fight people directly. Sometimes the smartest move is to step out of the argument and let the structure around them collapse. Now let's make this practical. Because this isn't just about one story. If you're in a situation where someone is trying to blame you for something you didn't do, don't rush to clear your name emotionally. Document everything, keep records, let facts build over time. If someone is trying to pressure you into signing something, agreeing to something, or taking responsibility too quickly, slow down, read carefully, ask questions, and understand what happens after you say yes. If you're being underestimated, don't waste energy correcting people who benefit from misunderstanding you. Focus on building results that don't require their approval. And most importantly, if you feel like you're always reacting, that's your signal to stop. Step back, reassess. Because constant reaction means you're playing someone else's game, and you will always lose that long term. The goal isn't to win every moment. The goal is to control the outcome, and that requires patience, discipline, and the ability to stay quiet when everything in you wants to speak. That's not weakness, that's restraint. And restraint is what gives you options. Looking back, nothing I did was complicated. It just wasn't rushed. And that's what made the difference. Because when you stop reacting to pressure, you start applying it. And once you control where the pressure goes, you don't need to fight anymore. The situation resolves itself, on your terms. I'm not telling you the story so you feel something. I'm telling you so you do something. Because situations like this aren't rare. They just don't always end this clean. You don't need a gala. You don't need federal agents walking through a door. Most of the time, it looks smaller, quieter, more familiar. It looks like a family dinner where your opinion gets ignored. It looks like a job where your work gets credited to someone else. It looks like a conversation where you're talked over, dismissed, or reduced to something easier for someone else to handle. And if you're honest, you've probably experienced at least one of those, maybe more. The problem isn't that it happens. The problem is what you do next. Most people wait. They wait for things to get better. They wait for someone to notice. They wait for respect to show up on its own. It doesn't. Respect is not automatic. It's adjusted. And people adjust based on what you tolerate. That's the first thing you need to understand. You don't get treated the way you deserve. You get treated the way you allow consistently. Not once. Not occasionally. Consistently. If you let something slide 10 times the 11th time, isn't a mistake. It's a pattern. And patterns don't change because you finally got tired. They change when you stop participating in them. That doesn't mean you start arguing with everyone. It means you stop playing roles that don't serve you. If you're the one always fixing things for people who don't respect you, stop. If you're the one always explaining yourself to people who already decided not to listen, stop. If you're the one shrinking to keep things comfortable for others, stop. That discomfort you're avoiding. That's usually where the change starts. Another thing you need to hear. Not everyone will be happy when you change. Some people benefit from you staying the same. They like you quiet. They like you agreeable. They like you easy to manage. And the moment you stop being that, they won't support you. They'll question you. They'll push back. That doesn't mean you're wrong. It means the dynamic is shifting. And shifting dynamics always creates friction. That's normal. You don't need to fix that. You just need to stay consistent. Because consistency is what forces people to update how they deal with you. Not words, not one-time reactions. Consistency. Now let's talk about something most people avoid. Boundaries, not the kind you post about. The kind you enforce, quietly, without explanation, without negotiation. A boundary isn't what you say. It's what you do when someone crosses the line. If nothing changes after the line is crossed, then there was no boundary, just a suggestion. And people ignore suggestions when it's convenient. So if you take anything from this, take this. You don't need to convince people to respect you. You need to act in a way that makes disrespect ineffective. That might mean stepping back. That might mean saying no. That might mean letting someone deal with the consequences of their own decisions. And yes, sometimes that includes family. That's the part people struggle with, because we're taught that family comes first. But here's the truth. Family is not an excuse for disrespect. It's not a free pass for manipulation. And it's not a reason to accept less than what you would accept from anyone else. If anything, the standard should be higher, not lower. I didn't walk away from my family because I wanted to. I walked away from a system that required me to be smaller than I am. There's a difference. And if you're in something similar, you need to recognize that difference too. Because staying in the wrong environment doesn't make you loyal. It makes you stuck. Now I know why people watch stories like this. Revenge stories, family drama. On the surface, it looks like entertainment, conflict, payback, a clean ending where everything gets resolved. But that's not why these stories matter. They matter because somewhere in them you recognize something, a situation, a pattern, a version of yourself. And maybe you don't need everything to collapse the way it did for me. Maybe you just need to see it clearly enough to decide you're done playing that role. That's where it starts. Not with a big moment, with a decision, a quiet one. The kind no one else sees right away, but everything changes after it. So if you've made it this far, here's what I'll leave you with. You don't need permission to take yourself seriously. You don't need validation to set boundaries. And you don't need a breaking point to start changing how you show up in your own life. You just need to stop waiting and start acting like your role is yours to define. If this story helped you see something you've been ignoring, not just feel something but actually think differently, then stay with me, subscribe. Because this isn't just about revenge stories or family drama. It's about understanding how these situations work so you don't get stuck in them.
Final note. This story is a work of fiction, but the valuable lessons we discuss are entirely real and continue to happen to many people every day. If this style isn't for you, that's perfectly okay. Please feel free to look for other content that better suits your needs.